And welcome back to the Dean Obeidallah Show. Third hour on Friday can only mean one thing. What just happened as we look back at the insanity of the week. And today it's a special Pride-themed panel with three people who've been on many times before. Alex Berg is back, creative director, journalist, telling stories from in front and behind the camera. Written for NBC News, The Daily Beast, and more, and activist in the LGBTQ community. Alex, great to see you, my friend.
I am great to be here. Happy Pride, everybody.
Happy Pride. V Spehar is back, political advocate, creator of the very, very popular Under the Desk News, has more than 3 million followers on TikTok. It's the source for Gen Z millennials to go for as long as TikTok exists, which we hope forever for V. V, good to see you.
Good to see you guys. Hi.
And Keith Price is back. Comedian, actor, podcaster, who we have to buy him a light because I told him his lighting is so bad. You can only see it if you're watching the video. We went on. We're like, can we do something?
But if I smile,
Keith Price is smiling. So we see Keith. Good to see you. Thanks for being on.
Thank you for having me, lover. Happy Pride, Habibi.
This is what every show. All right, so let's talk about Hunter Biden. Finally, a criminal.
Yes,
we got him a little better because Hunter Biden has been convicted of 3 felonies that no one in the world would ever been charged with if their name wasn't Biden, because they don't charge these unless they're part of more serious charges. So, V, I see you nodding your head there. Well, what is your take on the conviction of Hunter Biden? And politically, do you think it has any impact whatsoever?
I think it benefits Joe Biden, quite honestly, because I think everybody could see the absurdity of going after Hunter for something like this. The fact that it's the 2A crowd going after him is incredibly unusual. And then you have folks like my parents who are like conservatives, but they're not super Trump conservatives. But my dad voted for him in 2016, who's like, I don't think it's good what they did. When you have a kid that has addiction problems, I don't think they should be going after him. That was wrong. And he was really glad to see Joe Biden go home to be with Hunter, say how he was proud of him. He's like, that's not right. I don't like that. And so I think it backfired on the Republicans because it gave Joe Biden an opportunity to show what an incredible leader and stoic father he is and compassionate person. So I think it backfired.
It's interesting that it was such a backfire. Trump yesterday, you may or may not have seen the clip, expressed sympathy for Joe Biden and his son. I'm like, This is not you. Don't even play it. Don't even feign the sympathy and empathy. You're a horrible, vile sociopath. So, Alex, where do you come down on this? The idea of they went after Hunter to hurt Joe Biden. I mean, this prosecutor, as I talked about on the show, personally appointed by Donald Trump in 2018 to be U.S. Attorney in Delaware. The judge, who was very fair, but again, personally appointed by Donald Trump, and who put the kibosh on the plea deal, which would have prevented all of this. And there were objectively some fair reasons that were raised about the plea deal. So I'm not trying to say it was spin, but Republicans pressured for a full, robust prosecution of Hunter Biden. So they really went after Hunter to hurt the dad.
Yeah, I think as everybody has said already, this was an opportunity for Joe Biden to show his empathy. And this is also something that's relatable to so many American families. So many people have family members who struggled with all kinds of addiction. And this is something that Joe Biden has already addressed. So it also seems like it's not something that's going to be incredibly provocative for him. It's not a new issue. It kind of also seems like since Republicans have been going after Hunter Biden for years now, it doesn't really make that much of a difference whether or not he was convicted. One thing I think, however, though, is it really underscores the hypocrisy around what conservatives say about the justice system, right? Like, it's either that the justice system is a giant fraud and politically motivated when it goes after Trump, or the justice system does its job when it finds Hunter Biden guilty. So it's kind of like, which one is it? And I think it just underscores their inconsistency on this.
Yeah, and Keith, according to Maggie Haberman, who knows everything about Donald Trump, and she'll reveal it all in her next book. She won't tell us now, of course, but when there's a book to sell. But she was saying, and I believe this, they were rooting for an acquittal of Hunter to make the point, see, it was weaponized against Donald Trump. And we all get that. And they had plans to raise millions and millions. So this undermined their argument that, see how weaponized it is? Now you got the president's son. And on some other right are like, oh, it's rigged. Yeah, because Joe Biden's like God and he sacrificed his only son. His son is here. And I'm like, you're out of your mind, crazy people. Keith, so what's your reaction to all of this?
Well, for me, it's been interesting because, the whole point was to make this a horrific experience for the whole Biden family. And this is going to be a horrible mark on them going into the election. And what has happened is first you have the president saying, well, yeah, my son did it. And that's a shame, but he's standing up and taking responsibility for his behavior, blah, blah, blah. Look at him go. And then you have Hunter going, yeah, I did it. So you got me. I was high. It was my bad.
He didn't actually
I should
say
have
that,
been.
but still.
Well, you know what I'm saying.
That's way ahead of
You get my
trial.
drift. But I'm just saying that he.
Like, you don't know me. Who are you to pick up? That's right. That's right. It's like, you don't know.
No, but I mean,
sorry.
but he's allowing himself to be culpable for what has happened, even though in the state of his addiction or whatever was going on with him, he still managed to take responsibility for his behavior. And and the mere fact that whatever the prison term thing, because he's going to appeal and all this other stuff, but the mere fact that he's standing in front of it and not being afraid of it makes those people that are on the other side that are using that as a weapon look really stupid, because now they realize because now that they've got Hunter Biden, what now? What are they going to do now?
Yeah.
What's the next thing they're going to fixate on? Because they've been fixated on him since 2016. You know what I'm saying? Like,
his laptop,
so
remember that?
So I think that in the end, it's going to be great, because what I also feel now, this is the cuteness, is that it is okay to go after the children of presidents who may or may not have committed a crime. If there's smoke, there's fire, then maybe perhaps that now opens up the opportunity for us to have that conversation.
So Donald Trump Jr. right now is rubbing stuff under his nose off. He's like, oh my God, I got to clean myself up here.
Baby,
because,
Jared and
he used to live in the building. Donald Trump Jr. used to live in the building next to me. I'm not even kidding.
Oh, wow.
And I never saw him, but other people in the neighborhood had seen him. And then when he split on his wife, when they split up, he didn't. And of course, his dad lived on Trump Tower over here. Not to get it, but Mary Trump is the only Trump I like, and she doesn't live close to me, unfortunately. She's great. So it's interesting though what you're getting at now. The children, like even the mafia, the children are off limits. That's what we always hear. Families off limits. In this case, nope. V, what were you going to say?
I think that, when we talk about was this good or bad for Republicans, is it good for Joe Biden? The other thing, I had my mom send me a clip of an NBC reporter describing what happened after because they were in the room. And so she's like, oh my God, my mom's crying. And she's like, wow. I can't believe it. Because they said Hunter turned around, said to his mother, okay, it's time to go, walked her to the elevator, helped First Lady Jill Biden into the elevator. She put her head down and he took her hand. And then the elevator doors closed. And my mom was so touched by this. And this is, a boomer, previously Republican woman who's going to see this as what a good son, what a strong man, taking care of his mom. There's so much empathy and just relatability in that story that I think that NBC reporter probably doesn't even know, or maybe she does, that was going to hit with white boomer women in Florida the way that it did. But my mom has brought this up like every bit of 6 times now. Can you imagine him taking her hand in the elevator? Can you imagine what that car ride was like? Oh my God, I think of your brother. I think of you. I'm like, I think it's going to be a big game changer for white women who love their sons too much.
What a different thing. My mom, who's Sicilian, 100%. Like if I was convicted, she would have went right after the prosecutor, right in the courtroom. They would have had to hold her back. I'm like, Mom, because that's what Sicilians do. It's all about revenge.
Maureen too. She would have been like, it was me. I bought the gun. We look very alike. I don't think it was him.
And I don't know much about the human impact of crack, but in just hearing about the testimony, like he was smoking at one point every 20 minutes or something. And I'm like, and that's obviously a physical need that's going on. I'm like, what a danger. All different addictions.
This person has terrible trauma, and we can't judge the way that people self-medicate or survive.
Yeah, I know. I mean,
the outrageous trauma.
Yeah, but I imagine there's a physical need tied to whatever emotional need there, and what an addictive drug. And thankfully, I've never had addictions other than to, I guess there's decongestant during allergy season, arguably, but I'm not making light of it. I mean, there's nothing I've really had. I've been too good. Like I should really, as I get older, just really go nuts, get tattoos and try everything.
Let's go. It's Pride. We'll get you started on something low stakes like poppers, and then we'll escalate. Yeah. We're going to party all night.
That's how it starts. This is a gateway.
This is how it starts. This is the gateway. Yes.
Alex Berg,
my God.
Keith Price, and the ironies here. I'm here to convert you all to Islam. So it's like it's all
Let's do it.
We all have our own agenda here. So
We're going to have Radical June.
That'd be good.
Extremist June.
So let's talk about something that is just, to me, this troubles me to no end. And I know listeners of my show are tired of me talking about the stunning normalization of Donald Trump, who is a terrorist, who incited a terrorist attack on our Capitol. And they invited him back to Republicans yesterday to the scene of the crime for the first time. And my point is, this is akin to inviting bin Laden to visit Ground Zero 3 years after 9/11, because I'm not being hyperbolic. The FBI director, Christopher Wray, testified before the House and the Senate that pursuant to federal law, January 6th was an act of, wait for it, domestic terrorism. It was. That act happened, Wray didn't say this, but January 6th committee, because of one person, Donald J. Trump. And we know that the man is no different than an ISIS or Al-Qaeda recruiter. He brought them there, he radicalized them and sent them to the target. He's a terrorist, but no one in the media will say terrorist, even though it is. And they invited him yesterday. And some of them had their lives were at risk because of this guy. They had to hide. Josh Hawley had to run like a cartoon. So, Alex, let's start with you. I mean, where have we gone as a nation? This is like normal now. The guy, he's just convicted of 34 felonies. He can't go to 37 countries, but he can go to Capitol Hill. Insane.
Yeah, exactly. They don't care. I think the invitation is a blessing, right? It is a blessing that he is welcome back and that they're cool if this happens again. I think that it is essentially a green light to continue radicalizing people on the far right, and that they've now opened the door for this to happen again, for themselves to be targeted, and for our democracy to be further undermined. I mean, I really don't think that there's any way or amount of mental gymnastics that could argue that they somehow oppose the January 6th insurrection, but they're allowing him back in. I mean, I really think that this is just a blessing and permission to do it all again.
It is. And you know what so angers me too? They know everything that's going on. Do you know how Trump starts his rallies now, where he stands there? Let me read what the announcer says. And I'm not kidding. Ladies and gentlemen, please rise for the horribly and unfairly treated January 6 hostages. And then they play the January 6 choir singing the Star Spangled Banner. They make them stand up, and Trump stands there and salutes with like an idiot with his mush brain. Keith, that's literally what's going. That's what I'm saying. Like, the media's got to cover more of the rallies because it's a salute to January 6 now. It's a salute to a terrorist attack on U.S. soil. And and maybe because I'm Muslim and the Republicans demonized my community and we had to denounce terrorists all the time. They said our families know all these lies. And here they are literally celebrating a terrorist leader who committed a terrorist attack. And maybe it's personal, but Keith, what's your reaction to this bullshit?
Well, all I have to say is, as a Black person living in America, I'm not surprised that crazy white people exist. So all of what I'm seeing isn't unusual because I've, lived long enough to have seen a lot of crazy white people. What I have to say, though, is that these rallies, I'm sorry, the pageantry, I don't know what straight person is putting together this stage presentation, but we bring, ladies and gentlemen, the January 6th choir.
They just play. They're not there because they're in jail, but they play their recording. To me, it's funny on one level, and then it is horribly sad on another level because, like I said, I've lived long enough to see a lot of weird things happen in this country, and this is by far the weirdest period of existence that I've had in my lifetime. And not to sound like, I'm 6,000 years old, but like, I ain't no spring chicken. I've seen a few presidents come and go, puff, puff. However, what we're witnessing right now is it's like looking at the newsreels of, the Third Reich. Mm-hmm. And how it was going on and what was happening. Of course, we were watching it without sound. And this is what we're getting now. We're getting the Americanized version of those newsreels in live time. And it feels like no one is saying what a horrific thing this is loud enough for these people to understand it. And I say it with John all the time. It's like, I feel like those folks are under some sort of weird fever, just like those people in Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. Oh. And like someone's going to have to walk with a fire stick and literally set these people on fire to free them from this fever.
of not critically thinking, because I feel that's what it is. It's the fever of not being able to critically think, and that's what the symptoms are. And because if you were critically thinking, there's no way that you could look at this person and take him seriously. Like he's hawking Bibles, he's hawking tennis shoes, he's selling crypto art. He's what I mean, like. What kind of person is this? Like, why are you saluting
He's the leader
this
of the
person?
Republican Party? And V, I mean, literally, some of these people had to run in fear of being killed by the MAGA terrorists. And instead, yesterday, they sang happy birthday to him. They gave him the congressional baseball from the day before where they beat the Democrats. And one of the funnier things was, and Lawrence O'Donnell showed it, after Trump left the room, Ted Cruz was still clapping like this. Like he went, like as if Trump can see through the room into, like, because I assume Ted Cruz thought Trump would see the video of him clapping. And you're like, this is a pathetic and dangerous display of loyalty that we've never seen before. So V, what are your concerns watching this?
Dean, every time you invite me on the show, I have an opportunity to remind you that the Republicans have a humiliation kink. And this is just another example of that. They have a thing where they like to be embarrassed, where they do the most cringy thing that could get them the weirdest kind of reaction. There is something that I don't know. We're going to have to ask Mike Johnson's son if he was getting porn alerts from yesterday's meeting, because this man was so hard for Donald Trump. And it is like, there's some sort of like daddy humiliation kink that they have going on. And I wish that they would just embrace it, because I think it would bring them some peace and maybe some joy, and we could start to repair this nation, because the things they do make no sense. Also yesterday, Greg Stube, who he's the Republican congressman from Florida, his logo is Donald Trump, but on the side, like if you turn his logo, it looks like Donald Trump laying down. It's like Florida, but it's orange. You'll have to look it up. Anyway, he proposed legislation that would name all the U.S. coastal waters the Donald John Trump exclusive economic zone. Like they are just in a race to the bottom of who is going to be the most in love with Donald Trump. And I'm not sure what the payoff here is. I don't know if it's just that men reserve all of their admiration for other men, and this is just another example of that, or what they're doing.
It's like there's such a playbook that these people can either profit off of it by becoming stars in the MAGA world, or the counter playbook is you genuflect to Trump and then eventually you find your morals and then you reject him and you end up writing a memoir and then become a target. Like I just heard an interview with Stephanie Grisham, and she was talking about how she's now a huge target for MAGA, and yet she had a best-selling memoir about her time working with Melania Trump, et cetera. And it seems like there's just, it is so disillusioning, because it feels like it is all about money. It is all about so that these people can become living statues at Mar-a-Lago. It is all about the ways in which that they can capitalize on this entire moment while democracy is going to fall before us. And it's like they are falling dominoes, everyone from Ron DeSantis to Nikki Haley to all of these people just completely rejecting Trump and then just pivoting and genuflecting to him.
But how did they not pick like a hotter icon, right? Like you know that Donald Trump is an elderly man who allegedly shits his pants. Like, why aren't we going for one of the hot Republicans? I could see if everybody was like super crazy for like Dan Crenshaw. I mean, I think the eye patch is kind of sexy. Like there are cool people that they could, who are also horrible people who they could maybe like, I would get it a little bit more, but I don't see strength in Trump. I don't see people falling in line. A lot of the people who follow him are messy, and it's just, I don't get it.
Maybe they fall for the leather skin, but I think it's about a lot with just power, right? I mean, they're seduced by power. So let's turn to first the lighter thing, and then we'll get to some Pride Month issues here that are related to the news of the week. But one is, it's the Supreme Court. I think Justice Thomas and Alito, they alternate. They go, you have Tuesday and Thursday for scandals. I have Monday, Wednesday, and Friday for scandals. And they alternate. But to me, the more intriguing part was Martha Ann Alito. And we'll talk about the pride flag thing. But first, I want to get to this one because I find this insane. She's
speaking of the Germans,
right? Like Lord Windsor undercover about at this Supreme Court Heritage Dinner. And she talked about her fight. Martha Ann, Justice Alito's wife, talks about her fight with her neighbor. And she says, look at me. That's off the charts right off the top. She said, look at me. I'm German, from Germany. My heritage is German. You come after me, I'm going to give it back to you. I'm like, I'm Sicilian heritage. We're known for the revenge. Germans look at me. Well, I'm German. We're going to give it back to you. I can only think of History Channel stuff, which is unnerving. So I'm not sure.
Well,
Keith, what is going on with are Germans known for, I know they're known for like dash hounds. They're known for being on time,
no.
being very organized.
What it
Revenge,
means is,
no, unless she's saying something I don't get.
no, what she's saying is she's saying this to those gay Jewish neighbors who she is. That's what's going on. And you're missing the subtext.
Really?
If she's making a point of telling them, whoever these neighbors are, that she's German and they better watch themselves because we know what's going on, then you know exactly what kind of person she's talking to. That would you be surprised if the neighbors aren't Jewish? That's my question. But I think she's talking to her Jewish neighbors. And since they're gay, she's having her whole drama about the pride flag. They're probably gay Jewish neighbors that she doesn't like. And this is the thing is that they're messy gay neighbors, which means that they giving that shit right back to that bitch. And so because she's getting it back, she can't handle the fact that they're giving it back to her. So she's playing tit for tat with some fucking catty mother scratchers. And so she's going to have to wind up this. So this is the reason why that's become public. That's the reason why that's so public, is because she picked the wrong queens. Because that's what it sounds like to me. Or better yet, honey, she picked the wrong lesbians, honey. And honey,
I don't know that. I didn't know they
her.
were a gay couple. I don't know. I mean, this was the undercover. Her comments with undercover reporter Lauren Windsor.
Right.
But so V, I'm sure you cover this on your show. I shouldn't be sure, but likely. What is your take on this?
I think it's just a scared, sad old woman who wants to invoke the power of other losers to pretend like it's a strength. I mean, the Nazis lost. They're losers. The Confederacy lost. They're losers. If you want to follow winners, follow people like von Steuben, who founded the United States Army. We're fucking winners. He was a gay man. Like, follow the gays. We win. So that's the thing is, like, I just think the idea of invoking Hitler iconography or the German Reich or anything like that, why would you do that when that was proven to fail? The power wasn't there. They went through an entire period of national embarrassment and like trying to like revamp the German outside attitudes towards Germany to rebuild back in a way that they're like, we're not that. We reject all that. Right. But now you have these Americans who are like, we invoke the Third Reich. Like, that doesn't even make sense. The Third Reich doesn't invoke the Third Reich anymore. They're like, ooh, that was a huge mistake. We totally fucked that up. We don't want to do that.
They don't want to be associated.
They don't want to be associated,
you can't even say the Third Reich in Germany, isn't that right? Like, they don't even mention it. It's not even
I went to Oktoberfest with a bunch of Americans, and our tour guide was like, listen, Americans, don't get in there and get drunk and do anything weird. No Heils, no talking about the Third Reich. Don't even say no H words at all. If you do anything weird in here, not only will you get kicked out, you'll get arrested. And I was like, oh my God, they had to like prep Americans. Yeah.
Isn't that great?
Yeah. That is a tour guide who has learned that because it has happened before.
Yes.
Exactly.
Obviously, MAGA's had rallies there.
But
you MAGA people, like none of that, Hitler garbage. So let's talk about her comments about the pride flag. She was very upset, Martha Analito. She told Lauren Windsor, you know what I want? I want a Sacred Heart of Jesus flag because I have to look across the lagoon at the pride flag for the next month. So she has to look across the lagoon. I'm not sure if there's a binoculars or a telescope involved. I don't know what else she's doing.
Make one though. Make one and make it a thing. Put some effort in.
First of all, what's the lagoon? Like, what is this? What's
the Sacred Heart of Jesus flag?
Right. I have an idea what that is, but I'm saying like I have to look across the moat. Like, what do you have? You have a lagoon between you and your neighbors?
You have a lagoon. You live in such a rarefied world in which you have a lagoon to look beyond at your neighbor and be offended by their flag. Like, bitch, shut the F up. People are, I'm so sick of this. And you know what's so funny is that everybody's coming for this woman about how she recorded all of these people, so surreptitiously by, working the room. And the only thing I could think of is she basically did like the reverse of the Invasion of the Body Snatchers. You remember how at the end when Leonard Nimoy and that woman meet up at that point and she thinks that he's okay because she's been faking it this whole time? It's like she's had to fake it to get into that room to be with those body snatchers because that's the only way you're going to find out exactly what's being said. And that's the thing. She used her privilege because she knew exactly what kinds of people she was dealing with in order to get that information out, because people regular folks are walking around not thinking that Alito says those kinds of things. But guess what? He sure does. He sure
By the
does
way,
talk about wanting a godly nation. Come on
right,
now.
he does. You
He
mentioned
sure
those are the body
does.
snatchers. By the way, Brooke Adams starred in that, and I know Brooke because she's married to Tony Shalhoub, and all the Arabs, we all know each other. So I actually saw her in a play off Broadway a few months ago, but I know Tony and for years. So we've had dinner and seen her. That's kind of funny thing you brought up that older movie. So all right, so let's talk about some of the pride issues and what's going on right now because it is Pride Month and it's a perfect time to take a break and come back. And I want to hear from you as people part of the community. What are your concerns for 2024? Do you feel like the community is more under a gun? I know in the past, 2022, 2023, you had DeSantis and others, but they're passing Don't Say Gay law and a whole bunch of others. And now the ACLU says over 500 laws are pending which target the LGBTQ community. So let's take a break, come back with what just happened in our special Pride panel right after this. Ready? And welcome back, Dean Obeidallah Show. It's Friday, June 14th. We're continuing our conversation with Alex Berg, V Spehar, and Keith Price as a special Pride Month panel. So let's talk about the issues of concern for 2024 and where the community finds yourselves now in terms of, is it more challenging now? Was it more challenging in 2022 when Ron DeSantis was leading the charge in Texas and other states? So, Alex, let's start with you. Are there issues unique to the LGBTQ community leading into the 2024 election that you need politicians to be addressing and listening to and advocating for?
So I think we've seen a couple of things happen. So right now, there are still very strong anti-trans efforts in school systems and across school boards. And we've even seen Moms for Liberty come to New York City and try it with more left-leaning places. Mm-hmm. So I think there are very much efforts underway to continue to target trans youth particularly. I also think that we're actually living with the consequences of Don't Say Gay and other efforts to censor LGBTQ life and LGBTQ people. One thing I really noticed this particular Pride Month is normally you would see a lot of corporate support for LGBTQ folk, and that has really retracted. And look, I don't ever look to corporations for any kind of moral guidance, but I do think that this is a gauge for public acceptance of LGBTQ people. Anheuser-Busch, complete crickets. We shouldn't be surprised given everything that happened. Target has retracted some of their LGBTQ pride displays. And again, like corporations should never teach us how to be visible. They ultimately won't fight for our rights. They're out for dollars. But I do think that it kind of shows that broader acceptance has retreated a little bit. So I think that in that way, LGBTQ people are facing more censorship. We are facing efforts to push us back into the closet. And I think that a lot of that aligns very much with the efforts happening across state legislatures as well. And just to add on, I also think these efforts to ban IVF access are in part very homophobic because essentially we know that the Christian right, they want more white straight Christian babies. And I think because we have seen reproductive health technologies embraced by LGBTQ people, that there is a piece of those efforts that it also aims to target the family building of LGBTQ people.
Interesting. And V, so the ACLU is tracking more than 500 new GOP bills right now in state legislatures. And this is in addition to all the other laws we've seen on our show and we've covered over the last few years. Where does your community find yourselves right now in going to 2024 election?
So what I try to remind the kids is like a lot of this is nonsense and it is a flooding tactic to make it look like there's so much support for anti-gay legislation when we know in fact that is straight up not true. It's just not true. But they'll put in all these bills to manufacture consensus to make it look like all of these bills are necessary and so many people support them. Something Alex just said about corporations pulling back on pride. I actually had a corporation I worked with last year that I'm not going to name because I hope to work with them again in the future when they learn. Told me, we're not going to do Pride this year because we don't want you to get hurt. You know what happened with Dylan last year, and we don't want to see you get hurt if you do a Pride thing. I was like, okay, let me decide, because my mortgage is still due, so let me decide that. But there was some of that. But you know who did not pull back on Pride, and I think deserves some flowers, is our Vice President. Madam Vice President Kamala Harris just hosted a Pride event at the Vice President's residency where she gave rousing speech about the things that we were facing and brought together queers from across the nation. There's a Celebrate Pride. She floated in her pool. She had all the kiki all on full display. So I think there are some people who it's easy to see the folks who aren't showing up. But for me to be in a room with Mr. Obergefell from Obergefell and Hodges, and have him say that he's disappointed that we have to relitigate hard-earned laws, but now we have the playbook that if we have to do it again, he will do it again. We will do it again. Just like gave me chills. And to know that our vice president is so openly and ardently on the side of progress and gay rights and trans rights, I think is something that gives me great hope, and that I hope other people recognize too. We need that anchor in there.
And Keith, before I go to you, the lesson that I think we've learned through this time is that progress is not permanent. And we've seen it with Roe v. Wade. We've seen it with issue after issue. It's not the regressive forces of the right. They don't give up. They just regroup. They change their tactics and they come back. They're not going to change their fundamental extreme religious beliefs. They're not going to stop on until marriage equality is gone as well, until birth control is banned. If they don't approve of it, it's got to be banned. Every nation, the entire nation has to look like Texas when it comes to abortion. That's what they want. Doctors going to jail and women suffering in pain and groveling for their lives to get the exception to be treated so they don't bleed to death. This is an effed up situation. And Keith, obviously you intersect two communities, and look at their attack on DEI again, to move America, to move your community, both communities, to make them invisible. They just want to see white faces, white, straight, Christian male faces, essentially everywhere.
Yep. Which is one of for me, it's sort of like my concerns are a bit bigger because, again, we still really haven't played a fair deal with the voting situation in this country. We haven't worked very hard at fixing all of the stuff that we know is still broken. Louis Joyce still working for the postmaster. What is he still doing there? You know what I'm saying? That's the reason why all these Republicans are walking around with this sense of we're going to probably win this one, because they have, the fix is in. But the thing is that we are allowing it's been going on since this time that we've known that there's been problems, and no one has addressed any of that. We watched them gut the Civil Rights Act so that it's like voting the Voting Rights Act got gutted. I'm sorry, gets gutted, and making it more impossible for people to actually get to the polls to vote. It's like it's an all-out effort to keep people from exercising the one thing that gives us the most power as a group and as an individual. And so, the more that we keep, dilly-dallying with, I feel like, all of these bills that you were saying about being passed, to me, are all just giant distractions from the other things that we're supposed to be focusing on. And the thing is that they know that if they keep all of us focused on all of these issues, they're going after the trans kids, they're, making all these other things impossible for gay people to do this stuff, and they keep us focused on that, then we are going to forget about the voting rights. We're going to forget about, the environment. We're going to forget about all that because we're going to get so focused on these other things. And so we have to figure out a way to divide and conquer, because all of those things are important to all of us if we're going to survive. It's like, I can't believe these people that are, screaming about the IVF, it's like these are the actual people that can afford to have children. These are the ones that we're not going to have to worry about them being on WIC because they're forcing, the system to take care of their kids. How does that even make sense? It doesn't make sense at all. But that's how they roll.
Right. And Alex, this week also marked the 8th anniversary of the horrific shooting at the Pulse nightclub, which took 49 lives, the LGBTQ plus community, frequent of place. Is there a sense, within the community, what can you share about a sense of physical harm from outside? Is it increased? Is it less? Is it the same as it always been? What can you share?
I think every single year we see the stats from violent hate crimes increase, particularly directed towards Black trans women and femmes. We know that community faces increasing violent and targeted attacks every single year. I also think that white nationalism is coming for everyone. I think that the past couple of years, as the Proud Boys have started showing up at drag story hours, as I think, we've seen January 6th rioters are hateful in every single direction and also homophobic. I think that there is a sense that the far right, the violence of the far right is also targeting LGBTQ people. And even in places like New York City, we've actually seen higher rates of hate crimes directed towards LGBTQ folks. And we've seen vandalism of LGBTQ bars and gathering places. So I do think that there is a sense that as the right embraces anti-LGBTQ rhetoric and legislation, that then there is that sense of, what is it, stochastic terrorism in a way, that it is encouraging people to attack the community. So I do think that the threat does loom over folks. And then also every single year, as we see lots of protests in June, pride marches, we also see a really heightened and intense police presence. I feel like it has just become so part of Pride now, especially in New York City, when we see very left-leaning Pride marches and demonstrations. You also will see hundreds of NYPD officers showing up and becoming violent towards totally peaceful protesters. So I do think that there is a sense of violence both coming from the right, but then also, state-sanctioned violence coming from police departments against LGBTQ folks.
And V, quick thing, like you mentioned Target, I remember when there was protests against the Target last year, but people saying, I don't like this, or writing emails is one thing, but some people were tearing down the displays. Yes. And when you engage in violence, that you're another level, like your brain is going to, I'm going to correct this myself. And I was concerned when I saw that, because I'm like, that's how you get to violence against people in your community. Because the same way with hate crimes, when they start defacing our mosques, and they were writing Trump on it in 2015 and using Trump like a swastika really against our community, then we knew, hate crimes are coming, because people are willing to commit a crime, even a lesser crime. We're not far from physical attacks. And then, of course, that happened. And in our community, it's women with hijabs are the ones that suffer the most, because they're the most visible. Like, I could be anything. I am half Italian. I look like whatever. But it's women with hijabs that are clearly Muslim. And they're on the front line in our community all the time. When there's spikes in hate crimes, they're the ones that get affected the first. So, V, what is your sense now about threats to the community? Is it something very palpable? Is it something that it's just a normal time? Where does it stand? And if Trump gets in, how does that affect that metric as well?
I think it's up to these entities, these beloved entities, to set expectations for their followers and for their fans. And I want to bring up the Buffalo Bills. I ran along with the Rainbow Dads this year for Buffalo Pride. We got, I think it was like over 3,000 books, banned books that are just about queer families. They're not anything. Wow. They're just children's books. And we handed them out at Buffalo Pride. And the Buffalo Bills partnered with me and Rainbow Families, and they gave us trucks. They built us a float. They had the mascot. They had everything. They can't have players, because players aren't allowed to do any of the parades, but it wasn't that. They fully supported us. They gave us sunglasses and merch, and they did everything for us. They bought us breakfast pizza, okay? And they posted it on their Instagram. And when they got hate comments, the Buffalo Bills were like, every single one of our fans deserves to be seen. If you don't like this, it's just not your day. Tune in tomorrow when we celebrate the next part. We celebrate different parts of our community all the time. They didn't back down. They were like, knock it off, fellas. Like, don't be saying nasty stuff to the gay kids. These are kids who want to read books, who are Bills fans, who have queer parents. Like, everybody's welcome here. We're all Bills fans. Go Bills Mafia. And they set an expectation that squashed that. We are all rooting for the same team. And I think they did an excellent job of that. And I think that other people should take a page from that book, which is standing up to them and not always being so like pious and like what we're doing for the queer community. The Bills were like, shut up. Come on. Of course we have gay fans. Their parents are gay. These are kids. Like, leave them alone. Yeah. You know what I mean? That kind of attitude can also diffuse a lot of the hate, and I think is important.
I think so.
But it's also the microaggressions we see. I mean, Alex did a great job of laying out like some of the major things we see. But another thing I've noticed at gay bars is like there are so few spaces for queer people to gather with other queer people and feel safe and in community with each other. And I do think these spaces are still needed. We talk about the lack of lesbian bars in this country and the way that they're trying to rebuild them. And now what we're seeing is people from social media who are straight folks who want to go into a queer space and cause some kind of trouble because the gays aren't being accepting to straight white men who are just trying to be an ally, and they're not trying to be an ally. They're trying to create content at our expense and trying to like make us uncomfortable in our own spaces. So I think it's the big stuff, but I think it's the little stuff too.
Interesting. And Keith, to you, we're if Trump were to get in, what would that mean for your community?
Which one?
Like, obviously you intersect.
Which
so
one?
Many people intersect, but for let's because it's Pride Month, let's stick with that.
Well, I mean, it's very clear that the agenda is not pro-gay
Right.
on every
Easy to
level
say.
and in every and in pretty much in every state. You know, the thing is that I'm lucky to be living in a state where we don't have those kinds of issues. But I don't go out that much to the clubs or the bars anymore just because I feel like I don't want to be that old guy in the bar all the time standing around in the corner. It's like
That's
that
my
was my
dream,
fear.
to
That
be
was
the
my
old
fear in
dyke
my
on the
youth,
Yeah,
corner.
me too.
right?
Me too. I think I am.
Sitting in the corner of the bar, it's your stool, everybody. Yeah, I didn't want to become that particular person. However, I have been going out a lot lately, and what I have found is that I'm just very cognizant of where I am because, it can happen anywhere.
Sure.
As much as I love me some New York City, you know, any anything can pop off down in the Village, which is where I've been
Yeah.
hanging out lately.
Mhm.
Anything can go off there. And the thing is, it's not until the person has done a lot of damage will we be able to squash it. And so to me, I try not to worry about that too much, but I'm also very aware. But again,
Mhm.
I don't live in places where it's that hostile anymore. Like I left Texas, 29 years ago for that same reason. That was one of the reasons why I left Texas, because I knew that I couldn't be myself there then. So you can only imagine if I had stayed in Texas till now, dear God, I probably would have committed suicide or
Keith, you
something.
did comedy. Did you ever do when I was a newer comic in New York, they used to have an open mic at Kelly's, which was a lesbian bar downtown. And I used to do, and it was the
No,
nicest crowd.
Wow.
You had to be funny, but I used to go all the time.
no.
No, Suzanne
No,
Lustenhofer?
what years were that? Because
I've
I
been
had
coming
my
a long
own
time.
comedy
I'm much
shows
older
from.
than I look. I have a filter on from 1997, so I look like it's 1997 on my thing here. So,
It's that
all
good
right,
olive skin, darling.
that's exact. And a lot of I'm half Italian, half Arab. So, V, going back to something you said about that company saying we're trying to protect you.
Mhm.
This year we do the Arab American Comedy Festival. It's our 20th anniversary, and one of the clubs that we do it at a lot said this year we don't want to have the festival here this year because we want to protect you because people might be protesting. And I'm like, the people protesting are our people. They're not good. They're like, they didn't want to be associated with Arabs this year. And it's so we moved it
Wow.
so the festival this fall, it's going to be at Joe's Pub at the Public Theater downtown, which they were like, we'd love to have Arabs because the festival does really well. It sells well. And Joe's Pub, we had some connection and they've been really embracing.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's funny. Like you could think things are fine. And then something happens beyond your control, in this case, the Middle East conflict. And also we move back to like the year after 9/11, where people don't want to be associated with Arabs on their marquee. They want to say Arab because they don't want to lose other customers who might be upset. It's not like the owner's a bigot. He's not, because he is stuck with us during the Iraq War and other times. But now there's a business thing involved. And he's like, this could be bad for business. So I don't want your name up there. But I'm trying to protect you.
They've made it okay, right? It was when people think that the Harvard decision to overturn affirmative action was only going to affect college applicants. It didn't. It made it okay. When they started to say DEI could potentially be illegal or eradicated in Florida, it made it okay for people in New York to do it. And we see it in some nonprofits, even with the well, we're moving in a different direction from the vice president of community jobs, or we're not going to participate because we care about you. It's not. There's a permission structure that exists now, thanks to the last 2 or 3 years of legislation that's, whether it got passed or not, people got used to it, that says it's okay to not be as inclusive as we once were. You won't get canceled if you don't do a big pride. People will be okay with it.
I think that's such a great point and it reminds me, and I was looking up quickly, the Martin Luther King quote that I paraphrase a lot, that we were all tied in this mutual garment of destiny, and that what affects one community directly affects all of us indirectly. You're right. When the idea of bigotry or discrimination is acceptable against any community, then it can be applied to any other community you want to apply it to. And that's exactly what happens here. And so this erasing of DEI, this erasing of the LGBTQ community, we know that anyone who's not in their mindset is a potential target. And look, Donald Trump campaigned in 2016 on total complete shutdown of Muslims coming to America. We're like, what? How could this
He's doing
happen?
it again.
Right. Yeah. And the Supreme Court, well, the reason he's not doing it as loud, he says it slightly, is that Jared got $2 billion from Saudi and Trump's doing business deals with Saudi. He's so transactional. He stands for nothing. It's the only reason he won't call for a Muslim ban again, even though he says it'll be bigger it really won't be, because Saudi's like, we just gave your son and your daughter essentially $2 billion, your son-in-law. So it's remarkable. All right, before we run out of time, I'd love you guys each to say where people can follow you. And if you want to share any resource for people who are in the LGBT community or they're outside of it and they want to learn more about where they can go, because it's all learning. Like I've learned myself that people, as much as I try to expose people to what being Arab is and Palestinian and Muslim, people have questions and they need resources for answers. So Alex, let's start with you. Where people follow you, and is there any organization, grassroots or otherwise, that you recommend?
Yeah, you can follow me. It's alexberg.com. It's alexberg on all social media platforms. One thing that's really on my heart and mind this Pride Month is holding it down for our queer and trans siblings in Gaza and in the West Bank, and our Palestinian queer kin, who we need to be thinking of. And one great resource that I would direct people to is ACT UP is doing a lot of really amazing activism, I think, in community with Palestinian queer folks. And I would check them out. They can answer all of your LGBTQ plus questions, but then they can also get you plugged into this issue and show you ways too that you can also hold it down for folks in Gaza right now who are LGBTQ.
Wow, thank you. That's very nice. And V, what about you?
So you can find me at Under the Desk News everywhere on social media. You can listen to my podcast, American Fever Dream, comes out every Tuesday and Thursday, wherever you get your pods. And for me, I know a lot of folks feel unrepresented in this Republican or Democrat situation. I encourage you to check out the Working Families Party. It's workingfamilies.org. It is a multiracial, very queer forward third party that is building itself on top of the Democratic Party. So if you feel disillusioned with the two-party system, don't feel like you got to go to the right-wing light libertarians. You can come to the Working Families Party, learn about queer, Black, Indigenous candidates who are running on Democratic and progressive platforms that will make you feel more included. So I hope you join us there.
We had on the executive director a few times, but not in the last year. And his name escapes me right now. And it might have changed. It might be a different person right now, but Working Families Party was some great stuff. And Keith, what about you? Where can people follow you? And is there any organization you recommend to people?
Well, for me, I didn't know we were going to have the organizational question. You threw me there
it could
for a
be
moment.
anything,
However,
any resource that
well, for me, it's, KeithPriceComic.com. I'm on Twitter at Comedy Daddy. And like for me, the resource that I use, at least for me, when I moved to New York, because I'm now celebrating my 29th year of living in New York, for me is going to the Gay and Lesbian Center. And that's where, for me, I would say that to any person in any city where they're going, but if you're like, at least in the New York area, and I know that there's resources that they give nationwide, the gaycenter.org is a resource space for people, gaycenter.org. Because again, if you don't know where to start, it certainly helps. It's a help to help you. And the best thing about going to the center is that it gives you all of the political access as well as community-based services and all those other things. So everybody is there.
Well, I appreciate all three of you. Thank you so much for being on a special Pride panel and for being funny and insightful. And I learned a lot. So it was great having you on. We're going to take a break, come back.